Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We talk everything animation here, including Steven Universe, which we'll be getting into right now. I'm Dylan Hysen, and today I'm joined by Michelle Anderer.
Hello.
April Collins.
Hi there.
And Maddie Potter.
Hey.
We are continuing our Steven post-finale discussions. Steven Universe Future or Steven Universe? I feel like now that the show's over, we're back to calling it Steven Universe. And we don't have to say, like, Steven Universe Future post-finale podcast. Anyway, we're continuing our post-finale podcast. The topic this time is unanswered lore questions from Steven Universe. The show answered a lot of things, but there were a lot of potential plot threads in Steven Universe, and a few of them stand out as things that the show did not answer. So we are going to speculate on what the answers to those would be. We're going to, say, like, should the show have answered them? And maybe why it did or did not touch on it as much. So, things like what was in the chest, that's going to be our first topic. And then, who made the gems? Those are the first two, and we have a few other ones as well. We're Overly Animated. Find us at overlyanimated.com. Our Steven Universe feed still going for a little bit post-finale on, iTunes, search there, or on YouTube, youtube.com/overlyanimated. So, brief preface to this topic. We're talking about things the show didn't answer, and personally, we're going to hit on a few things that I've been interested in throughout the podcast's run, like who made the gems. This is something I've been talking about for 5 years on this podcast, so I want to make clear, I guess, that this is we're not trying to be negative or anything. I think we can talk about things the show didn't touch on without like criticizing. But if you want to criticize, you can criticize, or you could say like, I think it's cool to talk about this, but it's fine that the show didn't answer it. Like that's valid. That's a valid answer to this. So it doesn't necessarily mean we are criticizing, but we're just going to talk about these interesting topics. And even if we're frustrated that something was not touched on, doesn't mean we didn't love the show or the finale or anything about the latter parts of the show. So I think I think this topic is valid even with all those things. So, okay, that being said, let's start off before we get into the specific questions. I want to know, like, we a lot of us love the finale, very emotional. How about, like, from this mythology perspective, backstory of the characters, the gems, how the world works? How do we feel about the ending of the show in that context? Was it satisfying? Were most of your biggest questions answered? Michelle.
In terms of lore and mythology, I would say yes, definitely, because Steven's such a slow burn kind of show, a lot of the questions you have would be very plot related. So it would be questions of, oh, I really want to know more about this gem empire or this home world. What's that about? Or like, oh, how many diamonds exist? Or like just more about rose quartz or pink diamond. Like, and those things you eventually get to with time. So by the end of, I'd say, change your mind for sure. In terms of just like plot stuff, I felt very satisfied that the majority of like the biggest questions I had certainly were answered up to that point, and that everything else, like you kind of look back like, oh wait, what about that? But like those were smaller things. So again, I feel like the largest things we had questions about were all touched on to some degree. So I wasn't too worried about it.
Okay, yeah, definitely valid. The questions were answered. April, what about you?
I have to agree with Michelle that a lot of like the big questions that I had throughout the entirety of the show were, for the most part got answered, and the stuff that didn't, some of the stuff is like very interesting, but I'm not at all, I'm not overall upset that they weren't answered. So, I'm pretty satisfied in terms of lore, mythology, and everything, because show touched on so many things, so I can't be unhappy about it.
Nice. Okay. Maddie, are you in agreement with Michelle and April?
No.
Good. Dylan likes conflict. That's great.
Hey,
I am like,
what does that mean?
Fight us.
It's true though, Dylan. You love that we hate. Well, we're mad at each other.
Good for just no, not mad. Just good for discussion.
I know, but the show just ended up not being about the lore that I was interested in. it ended up being a lot more about the characters and the themes and stuff, but they decided to choose those over-explaining things at pretty much every turn. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not like mad at the show for it, but it means there's a lot of lore that just I would have liked to hear about.
Yeah, that was a very concise answer. That was exactly what I wanted to say in terms of the show, like focused on things that weren't in-depth explanations of its lore, and I think like that's because that's what the show ended up being. But there was a point when, for me, when like Barn Arc, maybe even a little later, like early on, like these like loose threads that the show presented of like what's up with gem culture, homeworld, the diamonds, these were like the most interesting things. Like these just got like posited, and I think like for the most part, like my answer to the like how satisfied are you? I think like satisfied. Like I do think the show answered the big questions of the things it proposed. I think the two big points where the show answered a lot of questions were the Rose's pink diamond reveal. I think that answered a lot of things. And then, when we didn't change our mind, seeing White Diamond, finally culminating all that, like the loose, concepts were mostly addressed on. Obviously I would have loved to gotten into the gem backstory more on that. That wasn't touched on. But the biggest thing for me is like, it was just, there's just no details. Like, I think that's like the thing where the show ended up like focusing more on characters and themes and stuff. And so it's like, we get to Homeworld, but we don't like learn really how it works or anything. It's we see it but we don't want to stop and explain things. And I think that really worked for this show. But if you approach Steven Universe at a time from like, I want to know the specifics to all of these questions about the gems and Homeworld and the Gem Society, I don't think we got too much of that later in the show's run. So I wouldn't say like I'm not satisfied, but it's just like that's just the way it was. So I think there's a lot of room to speculate on stuff. So that's interesting. And the one thing that annoyed me, and we can transition to the first thing, I do think the chest annoyed me a little bit. You know, I don't really care that much about the chest, but I want to know what they were doing here. I want to talk about this. Like, what's the show doing with this chest? So here's. I would say the prevailing fan response to the chest, I am surprised, has been not upset. I feel like more so there's been this backlash to the presumed backlash where people are like, that's kind of why it didn't really matter. It never mattered, the chest. There's like this one like joke tweet that's like, oh, fans latched onto this background design detail. And I think that's like a funny approach, and I think people most part have been funny about it. But I want to give the details on the chest. I had to look this up, but there's an episode where Steven specifically tries to open the chest, which is Lion 4 alternate ending. God. This is not some background detail. Like we saw the chest in the Lion's mane, then Steven tries to open it, and then it's open in the movie, and we never learn what was in it. That's
Well, I think.
So what's going on here?
Yeah, so like I think the thing with the chest is like it's not the chest is special. Like whether or not it's actually special because we'll never know what's inside, the context of the chest has always been very special because once Steven goes in Lion's mane, the first thing he really sees is like the flag from the rebellion, and he finds the VHS tape for him. And everything else in that chest has pretty significant importance to Rose. Like, you could argue that the Mr. Universe shirt isn't that big a deal, but also, like, that was the shirt of the first concert she got when she met him. I mean, you also got, like, Bismuth in there. Like, so I think a lot of people are like, well, if Bismuth is just straight up bubbled and not locked away in the chest, like, what could be so interesting or dangerous that it is locked in a chest, you know? I think that's a big part of where I was coming from for so many years. It was like, it's got to be something special. Like, I thought maybe like a crushed pink diamond was in there for a long time. Just like the fact that it's locked felt like a really big deal because Lion's Mane's already a super secret place that only Steven can access.
Yeah. So what do you feel about, Michelle, what do you feel about the fact that it didn't end up mattering, presumably, or we don't find out if it did matter?
I mean, at first I was kind of like, oh, it was like the one thing I couldn't stop thinking about at the finale. But then it was, I guess, like, and this is probably how everyone else is thinking. It's like, well, if it didn't really matter in the context of the story of the show, then I guess it doesn't really matter as much to me anymore. because the reason people cared was because they thought it was going to have some kind of plot or character relevance, right? And if that's not true, then I guess like it is kind of obsolete. But like the frustration was still initially there because they have been kind of hyping it up, intentionally or not, for a while now.
Yeah, and you could argue that it was more fans hyping it than the show. For sure.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally.
But again, that being said, there's an episode where Steven tries to open it. So like it's part of the show to a certain extent. April, what do you think about the chest?
So, I was definitely bothered by the fact that like we never like got to see what was in the chest, and you're right. We spent an entire episode of Steven just trying to open it up. But so whenever I started to kind of like think about it more, I was kind of coming from it like, okay, like obviously like the whole like the chest with the videotape and the shirt and all of that, like that's stuff that's like personal and private to Rose, but like her having things inside of the chest must be like things that like mean even more to her. Like, you know, like it's like, okay, these are things that I like the t-shirt, like, okay, she obviously loved Greg, like that's outward and like known. The bismuth being out there, like, you know, like obviously that was a dark secret for her that she had poofed bismuth and bubbled her and kept her there. But again, like if it was that bad, she probably would have put it in the chest. So I think that the chest is just like a further extension of like, hey, we all have secrets, we all have things we want to keep to ourselves and keep private. And I think the one thing, especially whenever I was thinking about this more, was that like I think about in like The Office, which is a totally unrelated show, but there's like the very first like Christmas, one of the characters gives a letter or writes a letter to another one and then doesn't give it to her. And then like later on, like at the end of the show, they do they do give it to them. And whenever like they sort of like justify that and everything, like someone was just like, why didn't we get to know what was inside of the letter? And they were like, some things you just want to keep private and you don't want to share it for the world. So that's kind of what I think like of the chest, is that it's just something to like she wanted to keep private that she just didn't want to share with the rest of the world. And I can kind of respect that, like whenever I think about it in those terms, you know, like we all have secrets. We all have things that, you know, we do and don't want out in the public or out in the open.
Okay. So Rose's secret, representative of secrets. Yeah. I think.
Yeah. Because, well, we already knew, like, she would keep secrets upon secrets. And, you know, like, that just, like, falls within her character, you know? And I think the other thing, too, is that, like, because the chest is open in the movie, so maybe it has something to do with like Steven like coming to grips with like his whole situation, you know, or something along those lines. Maybe that's what opened it, was that him like embracing the fact that, you know, Rose is a part of him.
That's interesting.
Like
so Steven's arc opens the character arc opens the chest. Yeah. I mean, that'd be in line with the show.
From April saying that, it kind of makes me think like maybe whatever's in the chest is more reflective of her previous life as a diamond. Maybe that's why it's locked away. Like it's memorabilia from that part of her life that she no longer considers her who she is anymore, because everything else is stuff she identified with as rose quartz, but not as pink diamond. But maybe there was something that she kept over from being a diamond that she locked away because she couldn't let go of it, but she didn't really want to like look at it.
It's kind of like, what is it? Whatever, like you break up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whoever, and then like you have like that box full of like stuff that they gave you or like memories and stuff, and like you just put it in the box and then you hide it in the closet, but you don't throw it away, even though like it doesn't.
Rose's past lovers box. Interesting.
Oh my god! Please no.
Okay.
She keeps them all in the box.
Oh
no!
All the people. I mean, she does keep people in trapped places. We know that. Maddie, what do you think of the chest?
I like the idea that, like, I think that specifically with the chest, I like the idea that it's just really representative, like April and Michelle were talking about, that it's really representative of how Rose really compartmentalizes all this stuff. And when she moves forward, she really tries to, like, when she tried to be Rose, she really just tried to be Rose and pretend like she was nothing before that. And that's not... there's a discussion there about whether that's healthy, whether that's good. But the bigger point is that I think the chest is more that. It's more just like a physical manifestation of that.
Yeah, I like this idea that it's just like representative of Rose's secrets and stuff, and then maybe you open the chest and it's just not a big deal to show that Steven's moved on at this point from all that type of stuff.
I feel like that's probably it. Like it might have been like really impactful to him, but it's not something that we necessarily need to see for where he is in his life right now. So like April was saying, like maybe it's just like a kind of private moment thing for him that he doesn't have to share with us. The same way like Rebecca was talking about in an interview, how like we're not going to see him go to therapy. Like that's a private thing that we're not going to be privy to. Maybe this is another kind of moment like that.
Yeah, I could buy that being like why the chest existed initially. And so, but the biggest thing for me is like, why show the chest open in the movie? I feel like that's such a troll move. So it's like, if it represents secrets and Steven moving past, I feel like opening the chest doesn't land. And if that's the intent, because I feel like our reaction is not, oh, this is a cathartic moment for Steven. Oh, isn't that a powerful subversion that it doesment matter what's in the chest? He's moved on. I feel like our reaction is what's in the chest. Like, I don't think like that has really landed for us. The biggest thing I was thinking was from like the chest. Why open the chest? Is it a subversion of audience expectations? Like, is this representative of our curiosity in the show's mythology? This is obviously more broad, but just like purposefully not paying it off and opening it and then not talking about it. It feels like such intent is behind that it is purposefully meant to work against our expectations. So maybe very broadly, the chest represents our interest in the show's mythology and like us trying to know everything that's happening in the show, and then it's open and we don't get to know and it doesn't matter. It's like, oh, some things are like that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'd really like that, It's like, well, you can't know everything, and here's an example for you. I think that's actually, like, I'm super okay with that. I think that's kind of hilarious.
It feels, it's more satisfying than, like, a specific answer just because I feel like it explains opening the chest more. I don't know, was that their intent the entire time with this chest? This has existed in the show for years. But maybe that's why you open it. It's like, it didn't ultimately tie into the end game. But I feel like any explanation for opening it does feel a little tone deaf with like the fan expectations. Like people were pretty hyped about this mystery. Maybe on their board, this was never remotely as big of a deal as it was in the fans' curiosity of it. But then don't show it open. I feel like, or just tell me. I was like, even to the last minute of Steven Universe, I was waiting for Steven to make like a brief aside in that last episode. Like, yeah, this is what was in the chest, right? Like, it's so distracting.
I think that would have made me even more angry if they had been like, Steven, where did you get that apple? Oh, I got it from the chest. Right?
Like, it would have answered it.
Oh my god!
If it was just random
for
stuff.
5,000 years,
it's like. What is it? Classic Coke, like
old blue cheese that's just in its prime of
like
sitting in that chest so long.
Yeah, bro.
An Earth diamond.
She's aging something in there. Yeah. Right though, yeah. So I don't know.
Jewelry.
Shows have not paid off things before, but rarely do shows throw it in your face that they're not paying it off, like this move was with Steven. So I think it's a bold choice at the very least. I think these are two pretty good potential explanations behind what they're going for.
I just thought of something.
Yes.
What if? So, like, maybe there was a point in time in the show where they thought maybe they would dedicate an episode to opening the chest, but maybe just, like, the way this show ended up shaking out after Future ended, when Change Your Mind happened and Steven Universe proper ended, the fact that, like, because Steven is a lot about, like, Steven figuring out his own identity and, like, if he's his mom or not and how to be like his mom. And Future is a lot more about him just figuring himself out and not, like, him worrying about his mom anymore. Or at least, like, not nearly as much as the original series. So maybe at that point, because it's Rose's chest and Rose's line and Rose's secret room thing, you know, it didn't make narrative sense to harp so much on this last Rose fixation when this part of the future arc is about Steven's journey. So maybe that's another reason it's a private moment. Because like it did matter to Steven. It was cool or good or bad to find out what was in that chest that belonged to Rose, but that's not really the point of Future. Future is about Steven dealing with his own stuff, and he's moved past just worrying about his mom. And, like, if that's true, like, I think that actually makes me feel better. Because, yeah, it's got to be a Rose thing because it's Rose's chest, right? But this isn't the Rose show anymore. It's a Steven show. So maybe that's why.
Yeah, Rebecca said in interviews around the finale that their game plan changed once the format turned into like the main series ended a little earlier than they thought. Then they did the movie. Then they got the post series Future, and so she said there were a few things they had that didn't work in Future in the context of Steven's arc that they were planning on doing. So yeah, maybe this was one of them. Maybe they were planning on doing this, but you're right. Like it wouldn't fit Steven's like dealing with his stuff, and he's moved past the Rose stuff, so it dealing with the Rose's secret maybe doesn't fit in Future. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. To close it out, guesses on what was in the chest, like what was I would say like just something that didn't change the game for like the world, but was like important to Rose or something, you know, like maybe it would have underwhelmed us to learn the answer, but it was like something significant to Rose, or maybe it was purposely meant for Steven. Maybe he was supposed to open it. I think
she made it hard. She didn't give him a key for it.
Yeah. Well, we don't know what opened it.
That's why I'm like, oh, well, maybe, you know, like the chest only opened once like Steven accepted that part of himself, kind of. You know what I mean? Like, this is who you are. Like,
that'd be a sneaky chest. Sneaky chest. Like, you gotta accept yourself, Steven, or I'm not gonna open it.
That's how the chest talks, yeah. That's the chest talking, yeah.
Why though?
I don't know why, but
he didn't break the chest. It seemed like it naturally opened. So like, unless he shape-shifted his hand into a key, I don't know how he opened it.
It seems like it wasn't something huge that we missed, right? Like it seems like it was whatever it was like either a personal thing or something that they were able to deal with. I don't know.
It was just more Mr. Universe t-shirts.
I hope so.
Maybe it was the flower she put in Pearl's hair when we go inside Pearl's flashback memory. Maybe that was it.
Yeah, still rocking the rose pearl. Yeah, it was,
not really, but I mean, maybe that's what.
Michelle, should we add Pearlmathis to the unanswered lore questions? Should we?
No, let's not. That is answered. Bismuth is the answer.
Answered no. Yeah. Okay, that's sad. That's sad. Okay, let's move on to next. This is we're not going to spend all podcast, but this is my favorite question: is who made the gems? And
Rebecca Sugar.
Well, yes, she.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. That was an easy one.
And the diamonds for most of the actual gems. But Rebecca's only fueled the fire because she mentioned there's like I think CBR interview is like, what's something that the fans didn't notice or didn't know? And she's like, did you ever notice that the gems are solar powered robots? So that's what she said.
Noticed that, Rebecca?
Don't know what that means.
Like they're holographic? Like Hollow Pearl?
No, they
but how are they solar powered? They don't have a sunny day and they don't work anymore? I don't think that's been
they're
true.
just a gem. Like there's not a lot of surface area there.
So well, look,
really tiny processor.
Look, so we've been talking about how the gems are robot. I've been talking about this for a while. So, like, way early on in the show, at some point, like, Peridot talks about, like, organic beings. Like, and it's, like, the implication that the gems aren't organic. So we've been talking about the gems being robots. We knew this. But the show never says this or anything. And the solar powered, it's like, okay, how do they not run out of battery? You know, okay, sure, they're solar powered. That makes sense. I guess.
It's advanced technology, maybe.
It's very advanced technology. But the fact that they're robots means someone made them. right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
They wouldn't just appear.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they're inorganic already meant that, but her saying robot specifically, like, means that, you know, like, in our, kind of, the connotation in our brain. So, I feel like this is the biggest question of all that the show did not seem interested in touching on. I will say, like, this is a huge question for me personally. I'm not, like, super upset that the show didn't touch on this. I feel like it's not what the show was. For a while, I thought the show would turn into this. But once it became clear that we weren't like going to shift gears and answer a lot of questions and a lot of details, like, I kind of thought that's where we're going in the early mid run of the show. But once that became clear, I wasn't anticipating this happening.
I just want to know, like, what clues we were supposed to have picked up on. I mean, okay,
Solar powered.
I guess
Yeah,
so.
that
There's
there's
like a
solar-
light. There's a
I
light
don't
theme
know.
with them. You know, they regenerate. You see a lot of light and stuff, and their projections light based. I guess that's all in line
like
with the
I
solar
get the
power.
holographic portion of it, but the solar powered, like,
It's
Yeah.
thematic,
not
okay?
at any moment are they like, oh, it's cloudy. I just feel so drained.
Yeah. And they're like fighting
I should
night
say
and
that.
tide.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not that the sun powers them, but they just have this never-ending power inside the gem itself that projects holograms through their own solar power. You know what I mean? Like, they're not like a
No.
solar panel. They're just straight up magic.
That's
they
not
have
what
a
solar
never-ending
powered means
solar
for us.
power
But,
source.
I
but
was also thinking about, like, okay, like, whenever they're traveling through space, like, there's not that many, like, suns, I would assume, that they would pass by. And, like, Homeworld
right, I was
isn't
like,
near
does
a
Homeworld
sun.
have a sun?
Yeah.
Okay, that was my question.
I'm very upset about this. I am very upset about this question.
I don't think they need the sun. I think the power's within them the whole time.
Okay, again, the solar powered is not what I wanted to focus on here, though. It's
Yeah.
the-
It just makes no sense.
Who made the gems? So I've always been I present this years ago on this podcast. The grand theory:
Oh my God.
humans made the gems. And
Oh
then,
my god.
but okay, we didn't.
This
get
is just
into
like
that.
aliens. I don't like it.
Anyway, it doesn't make sense in the timeline of the show.
Before,
So-
yeah, the gems existed before.
Right, so
humans.
that was why we had the
So-
alternate Earth theory, where original humans on original Earth made the
Oh my
gems,
God.
and then they rebelled and destroyed original Earth, and then then the humans re-evolved on another Earth, and then that's the humans and that's why Earth is different, and there's 39 states. So that was the whole theory. This was like, we had a whole podcast on this years ago. The show did not validate this theory, but it did continue to tell us that the world is way different from our world, right? Like, we got the states joke in the finale. So that's a question too. But okay, who made it? Here's my pitch. I genuinely think, like, this is the best possible pitch for more Steven Universe is a mini series about the creators of the gems making the diamonds originally. Completely none of
What
our
would you
characters are
title it?
involved except Steven Universe Past. No, just kidding. So all of our none of our characters are involved except for
Oh
the
my God.
diamonds. We see who made the gems. It's a mini series. I know you're like, Dylan, this is so implausible, but Adventure Time is a mini series on HBO Max right now, so
For no
we totally
reason.
could see it. HBO Max, put this on HBO Max.
Oh my God.
I think this. I think this is like the way in to get, because I feel like this show ended Steven's run. Like, I feel like Steven's arc's complete. Nothing more with Steven. But if we're gonna see more Steven Universe, then go way back, way before Steven existed. That would be what I
I mean,
would say.
I will say that would be a pretty big break from the show, because the show's never not been in Steven's perspective. So it's hard to even imagine Steven Universe without Steven Universe, you know?
I think any
Yeah.
any future pitch
It's
on
not
Steven Universe
Adventure
doesn't
Time.
involve. I think
It's a
anything
bit- it's a
doesn't
very
involve him.
focus.
How
Dig
much
it?
would you die, Dylan, if, like, this show gets made and your theory comes true, and the main human who was inventing the gems was named, like, Becky, like, Kane or something like that?
Oh my God. I would
What does that mean?
Rebecca
Well,
Sugar.
Rebecca,
It's a Rebecca
like-
Sugar
Oh
show.
my god.
It's like a Rebecca
Oh.
O.C. into
Yeah. But it's not a
Kane.
gem soda, it's just
Kane.
a person.
Okay, yeah. That'd be fantastic. No, like, so the other, in terms of actually answering this question, The only
Because then-
options are
because then my
humans
answer-
or another organic being that we are not aware of that lives
Yes.
in the Steven Universe world. Like we never saw another alien species that is naturally existing because, as we know, the whole gems and diamonds, it's hard to conceptualize, but they're all created. They're not naturally occurring. So some other species probably made them. Probably it's not humans.
Well, I mean, I have a theory. I always thought because White Diamond was the oldest that, the same way like humans somehow, like that organic life somehow existed on Earth eventually, I feel like the right chemistry came together on some rock somewhere in space and made White Diamond, and she had a lot of time to herself being alone, and she figured out how to engineer the other diamonds.
Yeah, so that would...
and them together figured out how to engineer all the other gems to be their worker bees, I feel like the first diamond created the rest of the gems. I think that makes sense.
That could only be true if White Diamond was organic. Yeah. So if all the gems are inorganic, but White Diamond's organic, which is not what we're aware of, but that could be true. One of them needs to be naturally occurring because, as far as we know, all the gems are robots, which is what Rebecca said. So White Diamond would have to not be a robot for that to happen.
Yeah. I mean, couldn't some chemical have smashed into a rock and it just I feel like it doesn't have to be organic for it to have accidentally become.
My understanding is that is what that word means. My understanding is I totally buy into there's infinite universes, and so how do we know how aliens work? But my understanding is they said they're saying the gems were made, that's what that means. So I think that's definitely the most likely thing is some foreign entity made them, and that would be so cool seeing another alien species and the history of them making the diamonds revolting against them probably and killing them, considering they don't exist anywhere, they were technologically advanced to make the diamonds, they probably got wiped out.
I think
yeah,
I haven't been able to answer this question yet, and I want to answer the question.
Yeah, what's the answer to the question?
The answer to the question is I agree with you that there's another race. What they did was they were trying to answer the problem of any advanced race, we're rapidly getting to this point where we need to answer energy problems. We need to answer we're running out of resources, we're running out of stuff, we need stuff to make stuff, and they're we have all these rocks. What if we just make the rocks into something?
that'd be you, Maddie. You'd be like, rocks, yeah, let's do it.
Dylan, you're gonna hear a lot about rocks in the coming questions. I'm gonna talk a lot about rocks.
This isn't the rock question? Okay.
Dylan,
rock question.
Gemstones are just rocks anyway.
Dylan, I have so many rock answers for you. The next question is so much rocks.
Okay, I guess the next one's about diamonds, sure.
Yeah, it is.
And there's a lot of rocks.
Yeah, okay, those next two.
I can also answer this one. Diamonds are...
Okay, wait, we didn't even say the question. Okay, we'll get to... Okay, these next two questions are related. They're related. But yeah, anyway, so mini-series, I'm telling you. Yeah, it's but to answer the other questions in the beginning, is it bad the show didn't address this? I don't think so. I think it would have been... They could have done a mini series within the, but that doesn't sound like this show. They could have done like Korra had the origins within it, They could have done something like that, but
they could have done those little shorts from Ruby, those remnant shorts.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. That's not a show that I'm aware of. But I thought you were going to say because I'm trying not to think about it. I thought that I think the gem classroom.
That's what I mean, though, Dylan.
Amethyst teaches us about how they were made.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it would be Bismuth. It would definitely be Bismuth teaching.
I will. Also do the spin-off of Bismuth, Paradigm Lapis. I'm still pitching that. Anyway. Okay, so it's probably, there's no exciting answer because it's someone who we never met made the gems, probably. Unless it's the weird circuitous
White Diamond just could have been.
Or White Diamond is secretly organic, yeah. I mean, you're right. I think that's the other major category is somehow they naturally occurred, even though it doesn't make sense with what we know. There could be a secret revealed, yeah.
Nothing makes sense in the universe. So.
I mean, really, the gems do not make any sense. Yeah. They are way beyond our technological understanding.
Absolutely.
How do you make something like
we're
that?
Only humans. We can't comprehend them.
Nope.
Steven is a gem. you know.
He's like a whole gem and half human. He's pretty.
By the way,
I
I didn't put it on here, but we'd never gotten to specifics of like why Steven confused with people and what that's about, and like what's gonna happen with Steven's kids, and like, you know, like all that kind of stuff. Like, not like we answered any of that.
Oh,
but
gosh, his kids. I don't know.
but we did answer like it's like, oh, is Connie like was something special about
human.
Connie? Steven fused with Greg, so like that kind of answered. He confused with
Yeah.
humans.
Dylan, I hate that you brought that up because I'm thinking about so many things that I can't mention now.
Okay, don't mention them.
I know. I won't mention them, Dylan, but I'm really upset that you brought it up.
Well, look, let's get it out of your head by moving to me specifically. Let's get it out by moving to these next two questions. They're related. So what are the origins of the diamonds and White Diamond? I mean, Michelle proposed the theory that White Diamond like organically occurred or something. And then we also touched on like why is Earth on Steven Universe the way it is, which is a major separate question. And the finale reminded us of that. But with 39 states, we've seen maps in Steven Universe for a few years. Russia is just a crater. Like there's no Russia, you know. So we know this world is different.
Well, I was gonna say I feel like the 39 states that do exist have some kind of significance, at least in terms to Rebecca. Just because like we know like the whole like. Part of the reason why Russia isn't on the map or is just a crater is because they like blocked the show and everything like that. So
you think it's the homophobic states that don't exist, is what you're saying?
Yeah, something along those lines. Like there's a reason why those 39 states got to stay.
Which are the 11? No, or the I don't know about that, but that's I've seen people say this. Okay, so in terms of the why the Earth is the way it is, I feel like the standard answer is going to be it's our Earth, but in an alternate timeline where the gems influence the Earth. Wait. So the gems having like had a war on Earth, like things just got wiped out of existence and stuff like that.
Wait, Dylan, no, Dylan. Did you skip over the diving question and not give me a chance to answer?
We're getting back to that. We can take these at once. Take these at once.
Upset with you if you have.
We can take these both at once. But right, like this is like our Earth if the gems had influenced like and built sea spires and portals and stuff all over, right? Like it's just our Earth with gem influence, and that's why it's different.
That makes sense.
Right. Is there could be I don't know. Is there a more exciting explanation?
There is, Dylan.
Okay, there's a more practical explanation, but it's not as fun.
Wait, what's more? I feel like that's the practical explanation.
I mean, I think honestly it could be in the same vein of why the gems are aliens in the show. It could be that, you know, because the show is so interested in exploring, you know, queer representation and identity, it could be another one of those things that helps them push through a lot of, you know, executive pushback by falling on but it's not our world. It's a different kind of world where different kind of things are more likely to happen, you know, which I think is honestly kind of a fair compromise when you're working with a big network. It's like, honestly, yeah, for a while, I've kind of wondered if that could have been a big part of it. I think there's a lot of fun in just like making things a little different for the sake of itself. But I feel like that could be honestly a big part of it. It's just easier to get people to be flexible when it's not like one-on-one comparable with the real world outside, you know?
Yeah, sure. That's like a meta explanation. But yeah, so that doesn't like give like an in-universe explanation, but yeah, it's possible that some of these things have outside influence explanations like that.
My answer to these. Okay, I am answering this, and I've been waiting for this.
Look, your floor.
I can answer both these questions at the same time, and I'll start with the diamond thing. So the most like common elements in the Milky Way galaxy, the first three are hydrogen, helium, and oxygen, which are like not really rocky elements. And then the fourth one is carbon. Carbon is just everywhere. And then there's a big like drop before you get to the rest of this stuff. There's a reason there's like diamonds like exist. They're just carbon. And I would expect that they made diamonds because they just had a lot of carbon wherever they were making the diamonds at on Homeworld. And so they started with diamonds. And that's pretty boring, like scientifically, but like I think that makes sense. They started with the stuff they had a lot of and then worked their way down to gems that were more complex, because diamonds are relatively simple. They're just carbons in a tetrahedral structure, like repeated endlessly. this also explains what happened on Earth. Because on Earth, I have mentioned this on multiple podcasts, that there are giant holes in continents all over the planet that coincide with the largest diamond mines on the planet.
Yeah, so this is something that you brought this up, and the show did not answer this, but you think the diamonds were potentially made on Earth, like harvested from Earth.
Or they were harvesting to make another diamond in the future. Maybe they just need a ton of diamonds to do it.
Interesting. Okay.
And then but the thing is, this doesn't explain why the water level is so high on Steven Universe Earth, because there's these big holes that should be filled in for new seas. But I think you can answer that by saying that they were making all these gems and it was releasing so much energy that Steven Universe's world is just so much warmer that the poles have already melted. And so the sea level is just higher. And this is my sci-fi explanation, Dylan, for why the world is so weird. Because Florida's partially underwater. But we also have these huge holes in Russia and Australia.
So this is my answer. The Steven world is global warming.
It's already happened. Like we're way past
global warming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Global warming.
Yeah. I remember that was like a big breakthrough. Is that the holes correspond to the diamond things?
And no one ever acknowledged it. The fans. It's so frustrating.
I mean, in our circles, but the show did not seem to want to. I feel like the answer to the holes. I always felt like the pretty basic explanation for that is that it was meant to show that gems were taken from Earth. So like there's parts of Earth that were kindergartens, and that's why like they're gone, is because the gems were made there. But the diamond thing is another step forward, which the show never really addressed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that also I think they put kindergartens where there were diamonds. Because, just incidentally, where they, were making gems, they were leaving these big holes that made it easy to go down and mine out the diamonds, too. So, you could just make a ton of quartzes or amethysts where there were in Russia, and then you're left with this big hole in the ground with just diamonds left over, essentially.
Yeah, okay. And thinking about the diamonds, if our diamonds were made on Earth, that might mean that the original species was on the original inhabitants of Earth.
Oh my God.
That ancient alien
Dylan,
species.
You're so obsessed with this.
Look. So you mentioned the diamonds were made on Homeworld, and I'm like, I feel like the diamonds went to Homeworld and made their own species there. They're made somewhere else, But what if they're made on Earth and then the people, the original aliens were from Earth all along?
It would make sense because there's 3 large holes on Earth that could correspond to each of the 3 main diamonds, and then maybe and that would explain why Pink is so much smaller. They made her after, they were trying to make a new diamond after they'd already made the main 3.
Yeah, Pink could have been made from those holes on Earth. I think that is,
No. What I'm saying is still that if to go with your theory, maybe white, blue, and yellow were made on Earth from those big holes on the planet, and then Pink is so small, maybe they tried to make her on Homeworld, but they just didn't have as much carbon.
Okay, that's possible too. That's another factor. Pink was made after, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So was Pink made by the 3 diamonds?
I think so.
Now we're getting. I feel like now we're getting into the territory of. I feel like the show would give us more explanation. Not showing us the original alien species. I think that's fine. Where did the diamonds come from? I feel like that's a big thing. At least a little backstory for white, yellow, and blue, and then Pink. We know, they made Pink, but they weren't made. Who made them? That sort of web. I think is very vaguely touched on. But yeah, they made a diamond, which is kind of crazy because they probably weren't made themselves unless White made the other 2, which is possible, regardless of whether she was organic or not. She could have been. They could have made one diamond. White kills everyone, and then she makes other diamonds. I don't know. It's hard to answer these things. I feel like there's not a lot to go on.
I think that what I think happened is, you keep mentioning this web, Dylan. What I think happened is when they started the series, they had a lot of these ideas, and they kept changing stuff as they went. And I think at some point they realized they had a web that would require, I think answering the questions just became so confusing that it wasn't worth time, because I think they started contradicting themselves to some things. They had these clear holes that aligned with diamonds. And I feel like that was on purpose. Someone realized that, but then they might have decided later that no, the diamonds were not made on Earth, even though maybe at the beginning they thought they might have been.
Yeah, they might have had ideas in the beginning that they didn't end up paying off. That's very possible. The thing is, I thought like that web that never materialized. I feel like that's how I thought about the show before the big reveal of Rose's Pink Diamond. But that made sense. You know, like I feel like they're capable of they had a lot planned out with that reveal, and it did materialize a lot of aspects of the show and make things come together. But if, you know, we didn't get that type of reveal for the diamonds or anything, and it's possible there was never anything there. It's possible they were like threading ideas in the beginning, or maybe they know the answers to this and they just like, that's not this series, you know, maybe.
I feel like in the context of the show, what the diamonds do is more important than who they are. And that's why we never really get into their backstory, which is why we never get into their backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree with that. It's just this one, I think, like I just wanted more diamonds in general. You know, and I think that manifests here too in terms of it would have been cool to see a little bit from before before Pink, I guess, because we start like our learning of the backstory of Steven Universe starts with Pink. I feel like, so there's so much material before that. Anyway, okay. Related to this, I guess, is quickly, like, I think we were touching on, like, planets, being deformed is, Homeworld. Homeworld looks broken in half, right?
Yes.
That's something I did think the show would answer. So this feels like a big one in terms of, we never explicitly say why this is the case.
Because they hauled it out, making too many gem soldiers. Yeah.
I think that's all
that's
it
what
is.
they do to every planet. I mean, that's what they were gonna do to
I agree.
Earth.
That's the basic explanation,
yeah. Why is that the basic? That's literally what happened. They started a homeworld.
You can't say that. Well, again, the show didn't say that, though.
Like, they had like run their resources dry on Homeworld.
Yeah, they hint at it. Yeah, but it's not something that they feel like spelling out. My question is like, why are they? I guess so. Did they first mined Homeworld and then they expanded to mine other planets? That's kind of the implication. Which is interesting.
I think that maybe what happened was they mined Homeworld and then some kind of stupid thing happened and it broke the planet. And they're like, this is stupid. We shouldn't be mining our planet like this and destroying it. This is where we all live.
Yeah, so then it's like, my question is like, why are the diamonds starting on Homeworld to begin with? Were they born there? Is that like...
that's the only thing that makes sense to me. That
because you feel like if they were created somewhere else, then they would have like known to go other places originally, you know, like... But to me, like, it makes less sense that Homeworld is like the big origin planet. But
I mean, it's literally called... It's literally called Homeworld. It makes sense that it's the origin.
It's the origin. It's the origin of everyone that's not the diamonds. I think that's clear.
Dylan, I think what happened is I think that we might be underestimating the time span here. Like, I think it might have been really. I think it's possible that on Homeworld the gems were made really fast. Like, once you have this thing, it kind of gets exponential because people just start making gems everywhere, and you just need rocks, and that's it. So I think it's possible that, like, there was this huge boom that only lasted maybe, like, a couple decades of gems being born, and then they realized, we need to get off this planet because we can't do it here.
Yeah, I don't think you just need rocks to make the most advanced robots, but
that's what the show is implying for some reason. I'm not
right? Where's the other components of the gems at the kindergartens? They're not just come out of the holes. There's something else going on here.
These are rocks, and I think that's stupid, and our knowledge, like, it's stupid.
Okay. I think, probably it's Homeworld, but it would have been cool if there were like traces of the original species or something. But
maybe they ran out of gold, Dylan.
They ran out of gold to make
for their processors.
Yeah, so that's why they had to make gem processors. Okay, so that's our future. Instead of computers is gem. We're making gems. Okay, but I agree that has like an exploit. That has like an implied explanation. Okay, here's some random stuff that's not related to Homeworld. Although I have on the list like Gem, Empire, and Homeworld details. I feel like I'll mention that.
That is,
Like, so here's what I'm saying. Like, here's an example. We have this arc before Change Your Mind on Homeworld, and we see there's this whole thing about the diamonds are sweating, and that's powering something. But that's not something the show ever really tried to explicitly tell us what was going on there. But it was like a major part of like that arc. Like they were in like the sauna and stuff, and the show didn't want to spell that out. So that's kind of what I mean with details. Is like Rebecca, I think in an AMA, said like, "Here's what's going on with that," but it's like that the show that's like a backdrop more than something the show wants to get into.
Yeah, because like, what does that have to do with Steven? You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think a frustration for a lot of people for a while is that Steven was much less interesting than everything going on.
I mean, that's just main character itis, though. It's not Steven's fault. That's
especially the show with these crazy robot aliens. But I think that's an aspect of why Future is so great is it refocuses on Steven in a way that was more successful than I think the show was in this aspect previously. Yeah, so just more details on and how the gem empire works. I mean, in the finale, the series finale, Yellow mentions like I've called back the armies or something, or like now I'm helping people instead of like fighting or something. Like what's going, like what is any of the details of any of that, right? Like the logistics of the empire.
They're gonna be a democracy. They're holding elections.
Well, is that that's another? Are they like their Zircon elections? What's that for?
The Diamonds are not leading Homeworlds anymore. They're helping out, but they're doing it from a demoted position because they started giving tours in their like palace, which means now it's like a relic of history and it's not like operational anymore, which is super interesting to me. They're establishing like a presidency on Homeworld that's going to be elected by the people.
Yeah, I think that's a good implication of the finale. I don't know that like the Zircons would be elected president. Like maybe that was more of a local thing. I don't know.
Something.
Yeah,
Right?
There's something.
I feel like the diamond. I think Zircon's not going to be in charge of the diamonds. I feel like it's like they're still in charge, but it's more maybe they'll have a council. I don't know, but yeah, like that's a good example that they'll posit things like this, but not really get into it. That's the next series is the election political Homeworld show.
Oh no!
Well, all right then.
Vote in real time for your gem candidate. Who do you want to elect? I want the polygrandma to be the president of Homeworld. She is wonderful, and her speeches will be like twice as long.
I think the off colors are kind of I don't know. I wouldn't call the off colors an unanswered question, but they weren't heavily focused on at the end of the show. What's going on there? You know?
I mean, like,
did they reintegrate into Gem Society because there were like all these people living? Are off colors all the off colors in existence, or where there's a lot of them like in this underbelly of the Homeworld, and then have they since resurfaced at the end of the previous Gem era, presumably?
I mean, presumably that is one thing that like, because back in season 1 and 2, like you were saying, Jillian, there was like a lot of speculation about the Diamonds in Homeworld just because we knew nothing, so anything felt possible. And the hype of going to Homeworld, it took a long time, but like I remember being so excited to finally get there. When we got there, like Homeworld didn't really matter. We just like went straight to the trial and then off colors. And we got out of there. It was like, oh, well, okay. Because like I will say, like one thing that it's not like a disappointment at this part, but like I did really want to know like how these hierarchies like existed in action. Like we get tastes of that with gems like Pearl and Peridot, and like Sapphire and Ruby, but like I wanted to see like a community on Homeworld where these kind of interactions happen every day to get a stronger sense of like how this affects gem life on a much grander scale. But we really just stuck to the characters we knew for the vast majority of the show, which I think is in line with the show's priorities, but I do always like kind of wonder what that other version of the show could have been if we had really dug into that more with the gem culture.
Well,
I agree with that vague statement for sure.
Yeah.
No, I was specifically though the gem courts you brought up. That's definitely an aspect we never got into.
Yeah.
But I think
that seems
really
super important
to
to
be
the
said
show.
about like Homeworld and how it operated is that there was a lot of like hierarchy at play, and just like from what we knew about the characters, you know, that like our characters basically gave you like enough senses to like, you know, how oppressive it was and everything like that. And that's really kind of all that you needed to know. I mean, it would have been really cool to see like everything in play, but we kind of got got to see that, and I think it's very like surface level.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like the version, like there's you think that we're slowly dripping out details in order to eventually give all the details, but what was actually happening, like that was like maybe what that could have been the show, but what was actually happening is we're giving a few details to set the stage, to set the theme and the concepts in play, and that's not something that they felt the need to dive into in more detail. And I think this is maybe it's different than we see from like mystery like cable drama shows, you know, like so I think it's not something some people necessarily expected like so drastically is to only be so thematically focused. But I mean, obviously what they did worked very well. But yeah, the court is another great, because that's like something that was talked about a lot. And yeah, what does it mean to be a member of the court? Who's in the court? Are all the gems in someone's court, or are there unaffiliated ones? Like, do the courts exist anymore? Like, those presumably got dissolved. What is that? How does that entail now?
I think the courts, like the way I always understood them, are kind of just like this isn't a direct analogy, but it's just kind of like a different race, like a different like sub-race of gems. Like, it's like we're all the ones that were made for blue diamond or yellow diamond or white diamond. Yeah,
that's the implicate, that they're made for them, for their purpose, probably. But to like do the yellow was like the war one, probably they're made for that purpose ultimately.
But it also implied that wasn't the case at times, and that made me like, it just doesn't make sense that like every gem was necessarily assigned to every diamond, because there's no way they dealt with like every single gem ever.
Things didn't seem as like stringently like categorized as we might have thought once we got to Homeworld.
It didn't seem like there was this crazy infrastructure in place that I thought there was. It almost seemed a lot more normal than I was expecting. Like, they didn't really like go about Homeworld in a way I'd like them to, like outside of the palace.
Yeah, problem is we didn't really see the daily life. Yeah.
No, but it did seem like there was just cities where people lived. Mm-hmm, which is not what I would have expected from Homeworld at all.
I guess so. It's hard to even say that much. Are there cities? Do people live in a place? Like, I guess.
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense though, because like for Steven, he only ever interacted with people who were colonizers or warriors or like rebels. So, and those are all very specific jobs. Yeah. Whereas like normal people normal gems would never have a reason to travel off of Homeworld. So like, of course, Steven never met them. Their job didn't dictate that.
Like, where are the accountant gems? We must know. We have to know where those ones are.
Do they
have money?
Lawyers? I mean, lawyer gems exist.
Yeah, lawyer gems exist.
Is that the purpose of the Zircons, or is that like these?
That was their job.
That was their one job? I feel like there's not. I guess.
I mean, I think they're just politicians in general.
Dylan, I don't know if you remember, but all gems were created with one purpose.
Yeah,
that is true.
The point of all of this.
Like, yeah, some of them have very simple purposes, and they're like, Lapises are here to terraform. We're like, what? That's the wildest purpose ever.
Right. I mean, think of like, in terms of like the show never got into specifics. We heard like Lapis terraforms as one line, and what song was that? Right. Like, but like that's the most we got into this, right? In terms of the purpose of Lapises.
That's their purpose. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. I guess Zircon's lawyer. There's probably a more broad purpose. Like
the way they think is conducive to being a lawyer.
Argue? I don't know. Like
I want a version of that song of "There's No Use in Feeling Blue" where they just list every single gem type.
That's
like
the song.
Every
okay.
single one.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, hundreds of gems.
Yeah, that's the only way we'll know. Okay. Yeah. So I feel like, you know, and we could probably keep talking about things that were touched on, but I feel like we've we've hit the main point, which is like things brought up, not delved into, not the direction the show went in. That's okay, et cetera, you know. Here. How about some character specific things?
I hate this.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm not talking about Onion. We're going. How about this is kind of a mythology and character, which is did our bismuth poof Lapis? This is a big question from season 1. And it looked like a bismuth, and then we met bismuth, or it looked like something, and then we met bismuth, and people make the connection. But I think maybe a little surprising the show never spells this out. I don't know.
Well, I think part of the issue with that is like gems that are the same kind of gem look very similar to each other. Like all the rose corsets look pretty much the same except their hair's slightly different. Or like the amethyst or even the rubies. Like some of them are so identical it's crazy. Yeah. So I don't know if like we'll ever know for sure. Like Bismuth never looked at Lapis and said, "Oh, my bad." So maybe it wasn't her based on that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't think it was her.
I don't think it was her, but I mean, it would have been an interesting kind of thing if like Lapis and Bismuth interacted more, but I don't remember them ever really doing a whole lot of that. So like maybe if like there was a more significance to the relationship, then that might have been something that like, oh yeah, like it was that Bismuth who poofed me, or I'm the Bismuth who poofed you. Like that conflict could have happened, but I don't know.
Yeah,
well now they're part of this trio that's interacting.
Gems in her back, so she literally got punched from behind, so she probably never even saw the person who did it to her.
Yeah.
I think I'm frustrated, not that we didn't see who did it to Lapis, but I'm frustrated that we never really like went into this idea like of like the trauma from specifically violence like this. Like we never go into how probably traumatic being poofed is, because like you're hurt. Like we've expressed that gems feel pain in the show before, and then they just experience so much pain that they just poof. Like they can't experience it anymore. And I feel like that'd be a traumatic experience, but we never like delve into that in any way.
I mean, we see Pearl. I mean, again, because it's Steven's perspective, like we see in Pearl's episode where she has Hollow Pearl, when she gets poofed, like Steven is so emotionally scarred from that, and Pearl tries really hard to be like, "It's fine, like I'm gonna be fine," but he doesn't understand like what's happening because he hasn't seen it before.
But it's
like Amethyst got her gem cracked at one point, and that was also really upsetting for Steven because her body can't. Like it keeps changing and it can't hold its form, and that. So again, like I feel like it's always from the context of those early episodes of like how Steven's dealing with it more than the gems themselves dealing with it.
And I also think that because it's those early episodes, the crystal gems aren't like treating Steven completely as an adult, completely as someone.
No, they don't want to glorify him with details.
Yeah, but I'm like. I'd assume that Pearl specifically, like that experience where she gets pooped in that exact experience might not have been like as traumatic as Lapis being in the middle of a battle and just suddenly just poofed for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's interesting, but good. Yeah, I guess it makes sense to a certain extent.
I think like the unknown factor of Lapis being poofed is specifically because her gem is in her back. So like 1 second you have some sort of like physical manifestation, and then the next you don't, and you don't really know why. I think that's the more traumatic part of it. At least,
I mean,
that's a good point.
Also,
so maybe
like,
that was the intent all along.
As much as we wanted, like, maybe Bismuth and Lapis to have a conversation if our Bismuth did it, I think an even bigger question is, like, what was up with Pearl? Because she's the one who put Lapis in the mirror, and she's one of the, like, she really didn't want Steven to mess with that mirror later. And I feel like that was definitely our Pearl who made the mirror with Lapis in it. So, like, why have they never talked? I feel like they have more of a reason to talk about things than Bismuth does. Because that was much more long-term thing.
I think with that, too, is that they kind of, like, they don't directly address it, but they kind of, like, skirt their way around it. Because whenever we first meet Lapis, like, she's very, like, non-trusting
hostile.
of she's hostile, and she's non-trusting of the crystal gems. And that, I mean, again, we know that Pearl was the one who put Lapis in the mirror, but I don't know if they made it known that Lapis knew that Pearl was the one who did it. And she could have also just assumed, like, oh, it was a Pearl. You know what I mean? So, like, not necessarily.
Because her hostility towards them wasn't, like, them specifically. It was more that they were crystal gems, and she wasn't on the side of the crystal gems. So that makes sense. Like, from her still feeling like a homeworld gem. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A lot there with Lapis. That. It's interesting. How about Michelle? I want to turn the floor to Michelle. How about Jasper? A lot of mystery surrounding Jasper, and then we do touch on Jasper a lot at the end. But don't. Well, it's.
I think we know her backstory pretty well.
What's her backstory?
She was formed on Earth.
Yeah, she was formed on Earth. She Pink Diamond was her diamond. She was a really big honking gem, so she was really good in battle. And her diamond gets crushed, and she felt kind of responsible for not stopping that from happening, because that's your job. You're supposed to protect your diamond, and they're everything to you. And so I think so that sucked for her. Then Earth becomes an abomination planet where all these rebels are running loose, and that's
abomination planet.
I mean, from Jasper's perspective, no order is out the window. All these rebels making their own rules. She doesn't want to stand for it, so she tries to contain that and fight on the side of Homeworld, and then that fails. And that's why, when she comes in the end of season 1, she just she hates the Earth so much, because the Earth to her is so conflicting, because she was made there, but also that's incredibly embarrassing, because that's where her diamond died, and then it just ran amok, and they didn't get to use it for its intended purpose for Homeworld anymore, and she couldn't stop any of that from happening, and so she just really dislikes the Earth and crystal gems, and it all makes total sense. So, I mean, that's her backstory. That's why.
Michelle gave us the Jasper emotion episode.
But what happened in between Jasper's diamond getting shattered and her coming back to Earth? I want to know that.
She was employed by Yellow Diamond.
She wasn't employed. I don't think they get paid. I think that they just get transferred, and then their life belongs to the other Diamond. Yeah, so she gets adopted by Yellow Diamond, becomes
you went through
you were it's so simple, but now it's expanding.
She's a head honcho. She's got this cool cape she wears all the time. I miss it. It was so hot. And she's flying around on spaceships doing really cool missions, and she's got paradots under her. Obviously she's worked her way up from wherever she was initially on her ranking on Earth, and she's doing intergalactic missions now, but she always still had it out for Earth. So when she hears from Lapis that there might be some rebels left, she's oh my god, this is my chance. I couldn't stop it before, but now I'm gonna make sure they're all wiped out. And then she fails again, and it's even more embarrassing and probably a little bit traumatic for her in her own way, because again, all their crystal gems are rebels in part because their differences in their way of thinking, it makes them so apart from the rigidity of the Homeworld system. They don't fit in there, so they form their own community that is sustainable and better. But for Jasper, she fits so well into the original system. She has no reason to change. It's working great for her. She's really good at her job. She's a really high-ranking officer. That's kind of different from any other gem we've really seen up to that point. So I feel she has a lot to lose from her perspective of the crystal gems winning and nothing to gain. So I think that makes for a really good foil to the whole crystal gem thing, And then it's it just gets sadder because she just keeps losing, and she doesn't like losing. You can tell she's won a lot of normal battles, but when it comes to Crystal Gem and Earth stuff, she just never wins, and it makes her angrier every time she fails, because she does have a lot of pride. So yeah, I mean, and that's why, she let herself get corrupted. She had the kind of problematic homeworld mentality of oh yeah, fusion's wrong, but then she started fusing and she realized the power you can have, and then you took that to a really bad extreme with Lapis, but then she and then she got corrupted from forcing herself into fusion, and it's just a lot of stuff. But I honestly I find Jasper very fascinating. I think she's her story is just very tragic. I still am concerned about her. I wish she would broaden her mind to more healthy. It didn't
seem like she ended in a super healthy place. Yeah.
I mean, again, she's not living in the hermit crab cave by herself anymore. She's
better than before.
So she is integrating more. It's just slow for her, but I feel like she's gonna get there, but it could take like 1,000 more years, honestly.
Okay, Michelle's answered that question in
Thank you,
extreme
Michelle.
detail. Thank you, Michelle.
Rambly, but I mean, Jasper is just amazing.
No, it was you're writing the book on the tie-in book about Jasper. That's what that was.
Oh my god! Could you imagine if they wanted that to exist? It'd be the best thing ever.
And they turn to you to the promo department. Write this book, yeah, and then it's what's gonna happen. You mentioned Jasper going on missions, reminded me of Jungle Moon, and that reminded me there are other aliens that we've seen.
Yeah.
As a caveat to our earlier discussion, we saw one other alien, I guess, besides presumably organic and stuff. But yeah, maybe they're fighting other aliens all the time. That's what Yellow's doing and stuff. I don't know. It's possible, I guess. Okay, last quick things. Onion. I'm bringing up Onion purposefully, but the finale lampshades that he is like superpowers or something, right? So it's like, why is Onion the way he is? That's an unanswered question, but it's like it's purposefully by the show in a teasing way.
Absolutely.
What that is. Yeah.
Absolutely teasing. It's just like, why is that happening? Well, who knows? It's Onion. Like, the answer is it's Onion. You don't need any more explanation according to the show.
But what if there was an explanation? What would it be?
That he is a diamond?
Is he part gem, or is he did he have Earth superpowers to get bitten by a radioactive thing?
I think he's the beige diamond, and he's the newest, which is why he's the smallest.
So that's what they were harvesting Russia for, was the onion diamond.
Yeah, he's half a diamond and half an onion, like a real onion. That's it.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but okay. So last question. Most interesting, not really a lore question, but it was kind of
muted. I am sorry.
Did you say anything?
I was back on Onion. Something to say about Onion.
Yeah, what about Onion?
What about him?
Onion was probably what happened was Vidalia was pregnant and Steven was around Vidalia and like there was this gem radiation that came off and formed Onion.
My God.
That's the most plausible.
I love that so much. That's why he has such an interest in Steven, and he can't explain why. It's because of Steven's radiation.
What if, like, Onion is like a creation of pearls? Or not pearls, of rose quartzes? Because you know how Steven would make like the watermelon Stevens and things like that. So what if Onion
quartz Onion? Oh my gosh.
And that explains why Onion has such a fascination with Steven, is because he senses that connection, but he doesn't understand where it comes from.
That's why he can't say real words, because the cactus and watermelon Stevens couldn't talk either. Oh my god! Yes, I love that.
Or Steven made Onion and cried out like an onion when he was a baby and doesn't remember.
That too.
But Onion doesn't have Steven's classic hair. All of the other things.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Okay.
You're right.
Clearly, we were robbed of this Onion backstory episode. So
yes, Onion miniseries on HBO Max. That's what we really need.
Yeah, Onion. Yeah, get that going, Michelle.
Honestly, that's the most that happened of all of these ideas we've had.
Okay, the more interesting. That ended up being more interesting than I thought. But the presumably more interesting last topic. Not really lore, but did Pearl ever see Mystery Girl again during the time skip? Did that ever happen?
I think, I like to imagine it briefly happened, but I feel like at some point Pearl also accepted the fact that, because a lot of Pearl's kind of journey throughout the show is her sort of getting over her feelings or, getting into a better place of accepting them, and that, again, that it's really over now with Rose. And so I think I think the reason why that was never a thing is because we needed to see Pearl in a better place where she's not freaking out over her feelings for Rose Quartz. And with Mystery Girl, I think she probably was just like, you know what? I just don't like this person. My initial attraction was purely physical, and
didn't like Mystery Girl.
Yeah. No, I actually kind of agree with April. I feel like Mystery Girl was very much just a stepping stone in Pearl's progression to being able to accept a new actual partner later, which is gonna be Bismuth. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So it's more that she was able to be attracted to anyone else, period. That was a big deal. Who wasn't, Rose. So, like, she didn't. Plus, like, also, Mystery Girl's so hot and probably gives out her number all the time. Like, she's busy. She's got her own, like, motorcycle Vespa thing. She's probably all over towns hitting up a lot of ladies. She's busy. So,
yeah.
I don't think she
for
can.
Mystery Girl.
Yeah, I don't think Mystery Girl can be monogamous right now either. That's totally fine. They
And really, when you think about it, Pearl, that's what Pearl wants, is a monogamous relationship.
Yeah.
And I don't think Mystery Girl was able to give it to her.
Nah, they just.
Do you think Bismuth is demanding Pearl gets rid of all the numbers in her head now?
No, because I don't know if Pearl actually calls them. She just collects them to keep herself, like, feeling affirmed and, like, I'm hot. Like, look at this. But she doesn't have to call them.
Yeah, and I
that's
think
why.
Bismuth understands that, too. Is that she's just like, oh, this is what, my girlfriend, like, is into. And I can be accepting of this because I know that Pearl is my Pearl.
We're assigning a lot of details to this Bismuth Pearl relationship. Okay, I like it. That's the miniseries. I've seen people speculate Pearl did continue to see Mystery Girl in some capacity, and Mystery Girl introduced Pearl to her new human friends, which are featured in Steven Universe Future.
I would love that. Because all of her friends are, like, gay mom age, like, like 45, 50-year-old gay moms, which is totally, like, where Pearl is in her life, too, at this point. So they're perfect for her as a friend group. They're her peers.
Yeah.
I like
Maddie,
that.
what are your thoughts on Mystery Girl, Maddie?
I mean, my thoughts on Mystery Girl are boring, that I think that she ended up being someone that wasn't, like, maybe Pearl talked to her a little bit, and she was introduced to, like, the queer community in general, because they just don't interact with, like, humans that much, the Crystal Gems we saw, and I think that Pearl finding out about the queer community, she would just go into full mom mode for all, like, the baby queers. And she would give them all toilet paper.
Yeah, she gives them a toilet paper. Like, she's a gay mom. Like, that is who she is in her life.
It's so valuable. Though. It's such a good present.
I mean, she didn't know yet.
I think she knew.
I think Garnet
saw the pandemic. It told Pearl, and that's why she's handing out toilet paper.
She didn't tell Pearl about the pandemic. She was like,
just about toilet
I think
paper.
A really great gift to give given friends is toilet paper.
Yeah, just give all the queers toilet paper.
And Pearl buys it because she doesn't know anything. But Garnet.
They eat all the time. It'll come in handy. Just trust me.
Okay, Michelle, for any further thoughts on these topics, any topics that came to mind, and closing lore unanswered thoughts.
Oh, man. I mean, I feel like I really should just rewatch the show from the beginning to really think about lore questions. I mean, there are things that I wonder about still, like Rose's healing fountain. Did they really just carve a big statue of Rose Quartz when she was alive and fill it full of her real tears? And what did that?
Yeah, what's up with that? Yeah.
What's up with that? I mean, it was a cool location, but, like, the implications of building it while she's alive are kind of bizarre. I mean, stuff like that, but, like, in general, I feel very fine about all the things that were answered. And for the things that weren't, I feel like either they weren't a big deal or there was a reason we didn't know. In logical reasons that make sense to me. So I'm mostly just happy. I would always welcome more of the show, but I also don't feel like I need it because, again, all the big stuff was already answered. So I'm just feeling good.
That's good. It doesn't sound like Rebecca wanted to get into the show again right now.
Definitely not right.
Yeah,
which I think,
and you wouldn't think that the Cartoon Network would go back to Steven, but again, Adventure Time had a minute, like, so quickly after it ended, so it's like it's possible at least.
It is possible. Yeah,
there's potential.
There's potential. Mm-hmm. Okay, April. Final lore thoughts.
I think, like, I guess kind of what I said in the beginning is that, like, anything that was really big and super duper important to me, there was like, I got that explanation and I got that answer. And then the other things just sort of seem to, like, fall into place. And it's kind of like in those moments where you're like, oh, it didn't really matter that much to me, I guess, kind of thing, because it didn't get answered. So, but I think some of the stuff that, like, didn't get answered, like, like who made the gems or what are their origins and that kind of stuff, like, I think it's nice to leave open because it does create that possibility for like a potential future story or something along those lines, assuming, Rebecca ever decides to get back into like the whole Steven universe world. Like, I think that's kind of nice. And it, like Michelle said, like, whatever didn't get answered there, there's like a logical explanation that's kind of like an outside, I guess, like force driven as to why it didn't get resolved or whatever.
Yeah, and that's true. There's probably outside factors for a lot of stuff too. That's good
and I can logically accept that. Like,
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's nice. I feel like I can't accept that as much, but that's nice. Some healthier mindset.
Look, the show, like, it's one of those things where, like, I feel like the show ended very well, whereas, like there's other shows that have ended, and I'm like, yeah, but, like, if a show ends and I have to sit there and still be like, yeah, but these huge points here, like, never got answered. Like, that's one thing. But, like, with Steven Universe, like, everything got wrapped up very nicely.
Yeah, that's a great point. The big things on our minds were generally answered.
Yeah.
And that's not true of a lot of shows. Maddie, final lore thoughts.
I mean, I got to have my geology rant. I'm pretty happy, Dylan.
Okay, that's what you were primarily here for. That's good. I'll say this talk of what Maddie and I are talking about, just like, and everyone too, like, there's like maybe there's like a version of Steven that got more into the details of stuff than what we got. I love what we got from Steven and what Steven is. I think it's, one of the best animated shows of all time. Like, it's hard to criticize it in terms of the direction it went. But it does make me crave a show like Steven that does get into the mythology details. Like, I don't think it would be the exact same, but I'd love to see this like epic sci-fi animated show that does delve into kind of like these crazy specifics.
I mean, She-Ra kind of does that.
I think she was also pretty vague with stuff.
But I mean, it's close. It's closer than Steven.
It's a little. I guess it goes a little.
It's closer, but it's still very like character driven.
I think similarly with She-Ra. I think she was also not super interested in this stuff. It does have bigger. Yeah, I guess the plot matters more to She-Ra. I don't know.
I just have She-Ra in the mind because I just finished catching up.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, big thing just happened where we left off in She-Ra that, so maybe this last season's crazy. We don't know yet, as of this recording. Yeah, I don't know. Like, we haven't really seen a show like that, right? That really gets into the nitty gritty. That makes sense, as a lot of these are kid-focused shows.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, I was going to say, like, there's probably a lot of anime that does, a lot of 26 episode
would prefer if it wasn't
shows.
I mean, the closest Western show is probably Castlevania, and that one doesn't even go that deep into it either.
Exactly.
I don't know about
it's
that.
Also character focused.
I mean, Avatar and Korra, like, it's not the same thing where it's a mystery, but like, it does have more mythology specifics, I would say.
Like, the mythology is important for the characters.
But I would say, like, the thing with Steven is, like, it's like this mystery. I want the mystery show that does ultimately play out
Gravity
and get
Falls
into
again.
Yeah, and like Gravity Falls, it sped through its conclusions at the end too. Like, I want the long form. But yeah, better than all these incredible, amazing shows. I want even better than that. So, okay.
Wow. Again, like,
better
is very, like, I think that just depends on who you
are. Right. Like, those shows are great. It's just different. I want a little different, but also good, I guess. It just makes me want that, just because we haven't had it, But Steven, I mean, there's nothing like Steven. So, like, what we got from Steven was also incredibly unique. And more important. So that's, but it is fun to talk about these things. I think this is a very fun discussion. I liked the part where Michelle monologued about Jasper for 15 minutes. That was my favorite part.
I'm so satisfied with it.
I will say, like, isn't it such a testament to this show that even after it's been over officially, like, we still want to know more? Like, there are shows out there that you're so frustrated with how things were handled that you could care less about anything to do with the show anymore. But the fact that we're so nitty gritty about this means that just, like, we feel so happy about the world in general that we want to spend more time in it. That's, like, the biggest compliment, right?
I was gonna say, I think like, to expand on that too, is the fact that, like, the show's over and we still want more, but it's not coming from a bad place, but we're also still, like, satisfied with the show ending. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
I agree with that. Yeah. And I think Voltron's another example of a show that like could have like a little bit of a mystery and then it expanded and it got into more details maybe than this, but not. It still didn't get into a ton of details. But Voltron's the type of show that ended. I wasn't eager to dive back into it. So yeah, right. That's the other side. Although I am higher than Voltron than anyone, I guess, looking back. But I still even say that. So yeah, like the place you end with Steven is very good, I would say. And I think it's kind of a perfect spot to dive into random stuff if that's what people involved want at any point in the future.
But just fun to speculate too. Like,
also just fun to talk about. Yeah, I would say I would personally, like, if I had to choose, I would prefer Rebecca doing a new original show.
No, absolutely. Like, because this was her first show. I mean, she's got so much time left to do other shows. Like, look at Craig McCracken; he's done a lot of shows, and they've been really good.
I will say they tend to give shows to younger creators, and it's not like everyone has a second show. But I mean, Rebecca's so highly in the industry.
You know,
who knows what Rebecca's doing?
I think it's different than anyone else. I kind of think Warner's gonna, right? They should just give her whatever, a project. It seems like the executives in these interviews, it seems like they agree that she's so great. So
yeah, but Rebecca can go anywhere. She doesn't have to, she could go to Netflix. She could go wherever she feels most confident that the stories she wants to tell, she can make there. And that's a privilege to be able to have that kind of, that people want you that much, but I feel like she really does have that. And I trust that she's going to use that to her greatest advantage wherever she goes next. I'm excited. I think she's going to do awesome stuff. I mean, look at this. Yeah. Again, this was her first show, and it was Steven Universe. Like, who else can say that? Not that it's competition, but, it's pretty remarkable. Has new
ideas. Like, she doesn't have something big planned, because, like, if she doesn't want to talk about Steven, that's because she wants to talk about something else, I feel like. She can't talk about it yet, but I feel like she's excited about stuff she can't talk about yet.
I don't think she's working on anything yet, but so I feel like we'll check back in 5 years.
I just mean that, like,
if it's true that nothing's really happened yet.
But I just mean, like, I bet she has, like, even if she's not working, she has stories that she wants to tell.
I think all these creators
and I think,
have like a list.
I was gonna say, and I think that, like, after Steven Universe, she's now in a position that she can tell whatever, like, even if they're small stories and not like huge stories like Steven, but she doesn't have to worry about finding a media to let it go. Like, if she wants to, like, storyboard out comics or whatever, like, she can do that, and I think everyone would be extremely accepting of that. Or if she wants to make, like, a mini series, she can do that, and no one will, like, bat an eyelash at her. Like, she just has that power now.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. A lot of show creators don't want to dive into it again right away because animation creating is so taxing. So it even like done several times.
Even like what is it? Oh, I can't think of his name now, but the guy who did Over the Garden Wall, like, he actually, like, went back and did like a graphic novel and kind of thing. So I mean, do what you want.
And Mike and Brian have done very different things post Korra. They really needed a break.
And they're doing a live action show now. So, well, that's another topic. Okay, this was basically another topic at the end. But anyway, this was a good discussion. Let us know in the comments what you thought of any of our speculation on these topics. Any other unanswered questions we didn't get into. Overlyanimated.com for future Steven podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed. YouTube.com/overlyanimated. Come talk about any of this stuff with us on our Discord at overlyanimated.com/Discord. And if you like this, consider supporting us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Carter, aka Cardboard. And thanks as always to our patron executive producers, Ryan, Steve X, Beatrice, Hugh, Michael, and Needle. Hopefully some more Steven podcasts coming. We'll see. And check out other stuff at overlyanimated.com. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.